Hey, what's up, podcaster? If you haven't launched a podcast at all, if you've been thinking about launching a podcast for a little while, you're absolutely going to get a ton of value out of this episode. And if you have a podcast, you might get some good value as well about maintaining your podcast. So let's dive in.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Hey, podcaster, as you heard, we're talking about longevity of podcasts. And I just came home from a band concert for my son, and he's graduating 8th grade this week. And it was really amazing because, well, to me, it's amazing because I know how hard he works, and he ended up getting an award tonight. And so I'm recording this podcast episode on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. And you're like, what, Adam, you're supposed to only do it on Wednesdays. But this came to me because as I was preparing for his band concert, one of our clients who we've worked with for a little over a year has not been monetizing her show. She has a solo show and she loves it. She is crushing it. She's always been crushing it. And she's actually has thousands of listeners. It's amazing. Thousands of downloads, thousands of people coming back over and over and over. People who need her. I mean, they really need her. They're coming back to episode after episode with all their heart and with all their trust. And she reached out to me just before this band concert today. And she couldn't say enough nice things. She's like, I love your team. I love working with Jerisa and Jen and the other managers in your team. You guys have always been a pleasure to work with. And I will say nothing but good things about you. And I constantly am telling my friends about you. When I go on the podcast forums, I'm constantly mentioning you. And actually, I've seen a couple of times that I recall. It's like twice. And she says she always mentions us. I'm sure that's true also. I specifically remember twice where somebody said, who's the best company to do my editing and post-production? I'm looking for recommendations. And she said, you have to work with Adam. His team is legit. And it's always, I don't know if humbled, maybe honored is a better, because I don't think I'm humble to know that she likes us. I think I'm technically honored. I'm grateful, I'm honored, and I'm happy, and I'm excited. And I'm almost ecstatic when our clients are putting us in front of other people. So she has a fantastic podcast. That's number one. She loves her podcast. That's number two. She has a strong listener base. That's number three. She doesn't have to do anything after she presses record because we do it all for her. That's number four. She's ranking in the top 1% in the entire world. And tonight, right before my kid's band concert, she said, I don't think I'm going to continue my podcast. I think I'm going to take a break from it. And so in this episode, I'm going to mention probably all three of the clients. Two of them are definitely canceling their podcast. And the other one was about to cancel and found out that they were still under contract with us and they still want to do it. And so they're actually excited. They're moving forward with everything. But I'll talk to you about those guys in a sec. I want to get back to my son who's graduating 8th grade, which means he's going into high school when the fall comes. And there's something about him that really stands out to me. He really tries in life. He doesn't really half-ass anything. He full-asses everything, right? He doesn't go into something that he doesn't intend to really stick to. A couple of examples is the drum lessons. He started doing drum lessons a few years ago. And he plays the set, he plays snare, and he's been the section leader at the school all 3 years that he's been at this middle school. And the teacher started this. Actually, I'm going to play it for you because it was, well, maybe I don't play it for you. Because who knows, maybe if you don't know my kids' names, maybe I'll just keep it to myself. Suffice it to say, it was really touching and moving what she said. So I'm going to play it. I've decided that.
And these are for me. I picked a distinguished musician. So I picked two in this ensemble. Two musicians in here who are beyond their years in talent, their tone, their rhythm, their musicianship. They've been playing like they've been high school, college kids since they were in sixth grade. So I'm so proud and happy to present two distinguished musician awards tonight. One to Alec and one to John.
So that's my son, Johnny. The teacher never picks two times for their awards, but this time, two people for their awards, but this time she picked Ella, who plays flute, and Johnny, who's in the drums. And I thought that was awesome. I mean, happy, proud dad moment, obviously, for my boy. And the thing that I noticed about him is his stick-to-itiveness. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, he wouldn't have gotten that award if he quit. And obviously, I'm proud of him. But let's liken this into podcasts. When I see outside of our company, it is clear, it is absolutely been a fact and a statistic overall, always, and just continues to be that about 10% of podcasters have stick-to-itiveness. About just 10%. Let that sink in because it's kind of scary. It's like, what? You're saying to yourself, I've got a 90% chance that I quit my podcast before I ever hit. I think that the statistic changes, but sometimes they say 6 episodes and sometimes they say 10 episodes. But I've got a 90% chance that I'm going to launch a podcast. I'm going to be excited about a podcast. I'm going to tell my friends. I'm going to tell my family. I'm going to tell my social media. I'm going to pay for an artwork for my podcast, like a logo. I'm going to, most of them, pay for a voiceover artist. I'm going to get podcast music, whether it was a free thing, which I don't recommend, or whether it was a bootlegged thing, which I also don't recommend, or whether it was their own audio brand with the original theme music for their show. I'm going to get this music. I'm going to get this artwork. I'm going to tell all my friends. I'm going to buy a freaking microphone. And who knows how much they pay for their microphone. It might be $20. It might be $69. It might be $99. It might be $250. It might be $500. And by the way, if you go to growyourshow.com/PDF, we've got a $20, $69, a $99, a $250, and a $500 mic. So you can kind of pick which one you want. I vetted them all. But going back to these people who start podcasts and they're excited about it, so excited that they're like, I'm going to do this. Everyone's been telling me I should do this. I'm going to make it happen. And then in general, they don't make it past 6 episodes. That is a true statistic. And it's been that way at least, I'm trying to remember the first time I heard that statistic. And it continues to be literally 10% all the time. The first time I heard that statistic was probably a couple of years after I launched my first show. So probably like 2018 or so is probably the first time I heard that. And the most recent published study where they actually have this came from Buzzsprout. And I saw that back in January of 2022. For those 4 years, that continues to be the same number. And they can prove this. So in case you need to check me and fact check me, this is real. You can go and look it up practically anywhere. And the stats don't lie. So you can look at the person coming up with the fake stat. That's one thing. But you can also see that there's 2.77 million podcasts out. And about 10% of them are currently publishing episodes. So when we see that, it makes me say, I'm proud of one thing. I am proud. Yeah, I hate humble brags. I freaking hate humble brags. I saw somebody, I'm so humbled and grateful that my 2 clients, she is a real estate agent, trusted me as one of the top real estate agents in the whole state of, it was Colorado, the whole state of Colorado, to help them find a home. Congratulations. And by the way, you can call me a humble brag. I hate that. She's not humbled. She's not grateful. Well, she might be grateful, but she's not humbled. She's proud. And sometimes I think it's okay to be proud. I'm proud of my son. I'm proud that what I'm about to share with you, I'm proud of it. And I'm not going to pretend to be humbled about it. With our clients, we've helped lots and lots of clients over the past 3-ish years. Since basically January of 2019, we've been serving a lot of podcasters. And just today, we serve about 60. And so I'm going to take these stats here and I'm going to just point out these 3 clients. One of them got talked back into doing it, to be honest, because they were still under contract. Basically, I wasn't being an asshole to them. I wasn't being like, you can't quit. All I was saying is, you can definitely quit. We would lose money. The reason we have a contract is because my team would actually lose money. And because you're not quite far enough into it, it's a lot of revenue for us. So I wish that I could just let you just be out of this. So if you are going to quit, that's okay. You will still have to pay this amount. But if you do want to do it, let me see if I can help you overcome the obstacles that are stressing you out right now. For them, the obstacles were that they lost. It's hard in their city. It's really hard in their city and I don't recall what state they're in right now, but I think it's in the Midwest, and I could be wrong. So I guess I'm just shooting a dart. I don't recall. It might be North Carolina, now that I think of it. The point is, which is obviously not in the Midwest, so sorry. These 2 women had launched a podcast with us, and then their main implementer of their business. Now, remember, the CEO type of person who's more of a visionary, and then there's the COO type person who's more of an implementer. And then there's more of, like, we'll call it a CFO or something, is more of an integrator, we'll say. But the CEO, which is a lot of podcasters, that's definitely me. I'm more of a CEO. Technically, I am a CEO of a few companies, but that's neither here or there. As a podcaster, I have more of the personality type of visionary. I want to do something fun. I want to have fun doing it. I don't want to be told what to do. So I'm going to create things, and then I'm going to tell other people what to do. Not in a rude way, but I can tell other people, this is how I want it to look. This is what I want you to do. Go and figure it out, because that's the hard part. I don't want to do it. And these 2 ladies that were about to quit, and I think they're in North Carolina. They were about to quit their podcast, and I let them know, hey, I get it that you lost your integrator. I get it that you lost your COO. I get it that your operations manager is leaving or gone. You tried to hire a second one, but because of where you live, it's very hard to find good help, especially after 2020, where tons of people got these checks. They started their own podcast, they're starting their own business. They want to make it work. And it's been really challenging for you. So let me, if you're willing, if you're not willing, you do still have to pay this. If you are willing, then let me pour into you and help you with the hard parts that he was doing to make it easy on you. So actually, they went and agreed on, well, we care about this podcast. It's already ranking. They barely launched it. Barely launched it. So I think they were 2 months. They were more than 4 months in with us because they were losing staff. They were only about 2 months in on the actual launch of their podcast, which as the time of this recording, it's May, as my kid is about to graduate. And this was in March that they lost the other staff, their other new integrator, COO type of person. But the great news for them is I want to pour into them. I want to serve them. Their podcast is already ranking, and it's only been launched a couple of months. And they're just remarkable women. I'm talking I just absolutely look up to them. I respect them. I appreciate working with them. Grateful, literally grateful. It's not a humble brag. No, I'm grateful for them, and I appreciate them, and I see a lot in them. And I was personally hit, not because they're my clients, but because I was bought in to their message. So I got personally hit when they were talking about leaving their podcast because work is busy and there's a lot going on, and they lost their second integrator in a row, or maybe it's a third. To be honest, it could have been the third, but I don't want to exaggerate. So at least the second. And with all my heart, I was just like, I want to help you. If you change your mind, if you want to quit it, like we'll just keep doing the monthly thing. You don't have to pay this whole thing all at once. But if you do want to stay with it, we got you. And these are the things that I can see you're worried about. These are things I can see you're struggling about. Well, let's do a coaching call. So we did a coaching call. Last week, right before I left for Mexico. And I was on my treadmill, recently got a desk treadmill because I'm getting that 6-pack this week. Boom, boom. Actually, it's like, I've got like 2 weeks left. With these two women, I'm at my treadmill desk, I'm pouring into them and I'm helping them to get their microphone and their recording. And they were overwhelmed because they didn't know what they didn't know. They had put so much trust in their integrator to handle all this stuff. And they left and then they went to train another integrator. And that integrator only worked for them for a short amount of time. So as they're finally getting trained and I'm communicating with them, they email me and they're like, that person is no longer with us either. And I think we're just going to quit the podcast. And that was kind of when I went in and I was like, I'll do anything. What can I do? I want to help you. I care about you guys. And like, I believe in your message, so I want to be able to support you. And they agreed to it. We had that meeting and now we're rocking and rolling. They're doing great. So our conversation was about a week ago. Now, the next thing that I want to share is the next person's story that I want to share is going back to the person I mentioned before. She talked to me literally today and she's just like, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this. Like, I like it. I appreciate it, but I'm not making any money with it. So let's make notes together. So one of them is because overwhelmed staffing didn't know what they didn't know. I'm writing all this down with you. The next one, it's basically because she's not monetizing. She has a humongous listener base. Her podcast has been going over a year, slightly over a year. Her listener base is giant. She's literally ranking in top 1% in the entire world. In her genre for her podcast, she's ranking top 100 in some categories, top 3,000 in some categories, which might not sound impressive, but top 3,000 is pretty freaking cool. It puts you on the top of the top of the top rankings. So, and also top 100 and in different countries, in multiple countries, she's ranking. Even though my team only does marketing for her in United States, she's been picked up by people in many, many other countries. And in some of those countries, she's ranking really extremely high. So why is she leaving the podcast? Because she's not monetizing. So I'm going to write that down because she wasn't making any money. Now she's telling me, just so you're clear, and I'm being completely forthright and honest. And if she listens to this herself, then she can say, okay, Adam's saying all of the details correct here. The thing is that she did say to me toward the end, she was like, if I end up going back to the podcast, and I probably will, I will absolutely use you guys. And, I appreciate you. You guys are remarkable. You've gotten me to this level. You guys are excellent to work with, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it because it's not making any money. So let's put it on pause. So technically, this client is pausing. Now, who knows? It might be an indefinite pause, which means she's quitting, and maybe she'll go back to it, in which case will make me super thrilled and happy for her because I believe in her message as well. Now, let's talk about the third clients. They're actually the two that I'm talking about a moment ago, that there was two of them. They are sisters. They are two sisters and they are a podcast. And their podcast, we've been working with them for a few months, but their podcast has been launched for 2. The next one, which was also the very, very, very first one, she's been doing this for slightly over a year. And she works by herself and she's doing this as a passion project. That's what she was doing it for, as a passion project to help other people. And she's not monetizing it. So that's why she's thinking about putting her time resources into something else. Now let's go to the last one that I started to mention. They are also two women. A lot of women in this scenarios, but these two women are both psychologists and therapists and counselors, like at colleges. So they're counselors, and talk about, all of these women blow my mind. The one that's by herself is just one of the absolute kindest, gentlest, most loving humans you'll meet in your whole life. I want to be her. I want to have her same personality traits, because frankly, I'm a little short with people sometimes, especially in the past with my kids. I'll share with you. I am seeing a therapist about my short temper because I'm such a short fuse. It's like I want everything done yesterday. So these two women that are my clients that are therapists are not my therapists. I have a different guy out close to Denver. But the point is, I know I'm talking about a lot of different things, and I hope you're getting value. This one woman, kindest, gentlest, I look up to her. I wish I had the type of patience, love, appreciation, genuineness as she does. As she looks into the souls of people and just cares for them. I just admire and respect it and covet it. I wish that was me, right? The two women that are in real estate, highly motivated, highly driven, very successful, making plenty of money in their business. Got a mad respect for those two as well, because they get shit done. They don't take no for an answer. They don't lollygag. They make a decision and they effing stick with it. Usually they almost quit their podcast, but generally speaking, they make a decision and they stick with it. Now let's talk about my two therapists, but let's talk about my two clients who are psychologists, counselors, and therapists in college. For college, they've passed college already, but they work there. And with these two, they are some of the smartest women that I've ever met. Like, there are some incredible smart people in the world, and these two are two of them. They can read people like a book. It's been fun working with them and having conversations with them. They are just so sharp at human psychology and sociology, just the way that people behave, facial cues, social cues, and they're very intuitive about where things are going. And they're both are extreme pragmatic. Being pragmatic is something that I'm a little bit of. I have a good amount of. And when people have more of it than me, I appreciate it. And these two, absolutely. Like, I get emotional. I cry during movies. You've heard me cry over the passing of one of our teammates. I mentioned already that I have a short fuse with my kids. I'm not as pragmatic as they are. And so I look up to them. I appreciate them. And I'm hoping that what you're getting out of this is it's three different groups of people, all with three different humongous skill sets, all of which are having a rocky time with their podcast. So these other two women, they just finished their 12 months with us. And there's a 12-month contract when we help you launch a podcast. If we're just editing your podcast, there's no contract at all. If we're marketing your podcast, doing paid ads, it's a 6-month or a 12-month, because we actually pay a lot of that stuff up front. For some of these ads that we put up for a lifetime for you. So there's either a 6 or 12-month there. There is no contract if you're just doing editing and post-production only. And then as far as the full service, when we're helping you rebrand a show or when we're helping you launch a show, it's a 12-month contract. There is no other option. It is 12 months because we don't charge a lot upfront. We actually spend more money in the first few months on your podcast, and actually spend a lot of time too, like labor. It takes us quite a while to be able to make that revenue back. We will make a living. We will make a good living eventually, a decent, fair wage, right? But in the beginning, we're spending money to serve you because I don't want to make it hard for people. I don't want you to have to pay a huge upfront fee. There is an upfront. But anyway, the points that I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter what kind of skill you have, how smart you are, how educated you are, how driven you are. It doesn't matter how there's going to be opposition. This is the point. There's going to be opposition. And the thing that I was going to say I'm really proud of is, going back to that, is that this is two people that officially quit. I talked one of them into staying to keep with their podcast because they're doing something great. The other two, of course, I'm not going to try. They're out of contract. And if that's your choice, that's your choice, right? But look at these stats. Generally speaking, it's 90% of podcasters quit before they hit 6 or 10, depending on which stat you look at. 90% quit before, let's just say before 10 episodes. Here's what I'm proud of. All three of these women published more than 6 episodes. All three of these groups of women have published more than 6 episodes. So I'm proud of that. They all made it past the main barrier. Secondly, they all got into top 1, all of them. Well, actually, the sisters, I don't think are in the top 1%, but they are ranking. I think it's top 5%. The point being that they all got ranked, and that's a benefit. That's really great. I'm proud of that. I'm happy about that. I'm really proud of them and what they've done, and proud of my team and what we've been able to do, right? And then when we go in and discuss like the fact that it was only 2 really of our clients out of well over 60. Right now we have about 60, but over the course of the last 2.5 years, 3 years. No. Oh my gosh, 3 years? Yep, we're hitting 3 years. So over the past 3 years, it's only these 3 that have quit their podcast or are about to quit or are thinking about quitting that I know of, right? And that makes me happy because that means that we've got something going on to be able to serve a significant portion of our podcast to get them to where they go. So that's that. But now let's talk about not making money, wanting to change direction. So actually one of our clients, one of the 2 women who have their doctorates, they're therapists. One of the 2 women is actually going to quit this podcast, but she's like, I'm going to start another podcast and I'm passionate about it and I want you to help. So we're not going to technically rebrand it. We're going to keep that other one up that has been up for almost exactly 1 year now. 1 year. But let's talk about overwhelm. Let's talk about staffing. Let's talk about you didn't know what they didn't know. Let's talk about because she wasn't making money. And let's talk about wanting to change direction. And I want to pour into you in case you're going through anything that they are going through. In short, let's go through these. Overwhelm. If you are wearing all the hats, you're going to feel overwhelmed. If you're wearing all the hats, you're going to feel overwhelmed. If you keep losing staffing, it's going to make it really challenging for you. And so for the sisters, with their overwhelm and their staffing, here's what I think they could have done a little bit differently. I think rather than trying to lean on an employee, a staff member, to take care of all of these hard things, if they would have in the beginning, because eventually now they are leaning on us and it's going to help them. We've got a professional company. We've been in business for years. We've served lots of other people. We've never let anyone else down. And our tagline is the easy button for podcasters. And so if I was speaking to somebody who resonates with these 2 women who are highly driven, highly successful, highly motivated, they get shit done. And when they make a decision, they generally stick to it. With these 2 women, if you relate to them, my suggestion to you is don't hire somebody as your personal staff and try to have them do everything. Instead of managing this on your own, why don't you outsource? Because my team was already willing to help with the overwhelm and the staffing. My team would have done everything that they might not have known in the beginning. They might have just thought, oh, we're going to have a podcast. We'll hire these guys. And they might have thought or expected that we were just going to edit the show, but not be able to serve them in all those other ways. Perhaps that's what it is. So if you are that person, I want to pour into you, don't hire your own person. And I'll share a quick story on that. Is basically that I'm a real estate investor as well. My part-time job that I work about 1 or 2 hours a month in is my rentals. I have a ton of rental units. Even as I record this, I'm in the hundreds. We're at like 300 and something rental units. Some of those are like larger apartments, like an 83 unit, a 68 unit, 120 unit, a few houses, that kind of stuff. These are things that I own either by myself or some of them are with partners. The point being that when I started doing that, I've been real estate investing since 2005. And in 2008, I had just gotten back from a Robert Kiyosaki event, and Robert Kiyosaki poured into us. Like, this was in Salt Lake City at the very top of the Wells Fargo building. And Robert and his staff were there for 4 days, and they were pouring into us, and they were talking about these 4 quadrants. And I'm going to share them with you. They were talking about the E is for employee. They were talking about the S is for self-employed. They were talking about the B is for business. And then we're talking about the I is for investments. And what I learned at that conference, that small, intimate, it's not a conference, there was only a few people there. What I learned there is that if we are trying to have a business, being self-employed and like being, let's say, a doctor, an attorney, a real estate agent, let's say, I don't know, being some type of consultant, that's not a business. That's being self-employed. It's not a business. People will say, I own my own business. Technically, the business owns you if you're the only person that works there. If you're the only one that works there, or if you have only 1 or 2 assistants, then you don't own a business. A business owns you. You're self-employed, which is a little bit better than being an employee because you can write more things off, he says. But he really talked about having a business. And that's why with my team, we have much bigger staff. But I didn't listen to his stuff right off the bat. I already owned some real estate in 2005, but after graduating from his academy, I ended up buying my first multifamily apartment, and I was excited. But here's the thing. I looked at that I was going to be making about $3,000 a month gross. I was going to be grossing about $3,000 a month. It was a small apartment, by the way. It wasn't a giant one. So grossing $3,000. But back in 2008, I was going to be grossing $3,000 a month and netting about $300 a month. And when that's after my mortgage, I got a creative real estate mortgage with a private lender. And that there's insurance, there's taxes, there's upkeep, there's painting when somebody moves out. And so I looked at it as though my only income, my only net profits was going to be that 300. And I remembered something that Robert said, but I ignored it. I made the mistake. This is something that I think will help you as well, not get overwhelmed and have correct staffing. What I ended up doing is I managed the property myself. And so I found out that because of how much I was working for that apartment building and collecting rents by myself, doing the leases by myself, background checks, if I did them, I didn't always do them, by myself, I ended up making less than minimum wage to make that $300, the 300 net. And that was a complete waste of time because it took my eye off the ball of my other business where I had 13 employees at the time. I had this other company with 13 different employees, and I was making about $20,000 a month. I was netting about $20,000 a month, and I was just in college, and I was really happy about that. But when I bought this rental for my passive income, I ended up managing the whole damn thing myself and making less than minimum wage, pretty close to $3 an hour, varied between $2 and $3 an hour, depending on the month. It was way less than minimum wage. And in my business, I had been making prior to that $20,000 a month. That was my net. And so now I'm taking my eye off the ball of my business and my employees, and I'm like losing track of it because I'm tripping over dollars to pick up dimes, trying to pick up dimes, and I'm ending up tripping over these dollars. So I ended up learning the hard way that you shouldn't wear all the hats in your business. In my real estate thing that I started, I wasn't an attorney, wouldn't hire an attorney. So I kept messing up on law stuff. Nowadays, I'm spending thousands of bucks every quarter, thousands of dollars a quarter with our attorney. That's absolutely true. Every quarter, spending lots and lots and lots of money. And it helps me make money. I don't pretend to be an attorney. I don't take my eye off the ball anymore. And I'm not the one editing. I'm not the one doing this or that or that. And if I took a few months off of my business, I might still have to work 15 minutes a day or something. But if I took a couple of months where I didn't work any more than 15 minutes a day, the company would still be fine. So that's a business, not a self-employed. And now we're looking at being overwhelmed and staffing and outsourcing. And so what I'm trying to say is, instead of having your own employees or your own person by yourself, you should instead hire the professionals. You should hire the attorney. You should hire the doctor to do these things, not Google. There's all this stuff. I'm just trying to help you. Now let's get into, they didn't know what they didn't know. So these ladies were scared because they thought it was going to be harder than it really truly is. Now, after having a conversation with me, now they realize that they really actually don't have to do anything and they really don't need any staffing. Next thing, because she wasn't making money. So we're going back to the first person that I had mentioned, who I spoke with today before I went to my son's, not graduation, but band concert, the last band concert he'll ever do in middle school, because he'll be in high school in a few months. So she quit because she's not really making money and she wants to focus on things that are revenue generating. I get that. I will say now that if you launch a podcast simply because you only want to make an impact, if it continues to cost you money, like this lady, as I mentioned before, is one of the kindest hearted, patient, loving people that you'll ever meet. She wants to pour into other people. She wants to help people, and she was doing it, and she had thousands of listeners. She cares about her listeners. Don't get me wrong. That's her driving factor today, as she realizes that she's been pouring money into her podcast for the last year. That it's like 14 months, I think, for her. But she's been pouring it for slightly over a year and constantly costing her money, taking money out of her pocket. She's looking back on it and saying, man, I need to do something that puts money into my pocket. But she began thinking that it would be a bad thing to monetize. She began thinking, like I did actually when I started my first podcast. I was like, I shouldn't monetize. I shouldn't make any money. If I do it, I'm doing it for the wrong reason. I truly just want to help people. And it's good to be altruistic. It's good to be helpful. It's good to be wanting to leave a legacy and an impact on the world. All of that's good. But if it costs you money over the next year, 2 or 3, or 6 episodes, if it's costing you time, costing you money, and you're not getting any financial benefit out of it, and you're not being able to meet your people, your listener, if you're not able to connect with them, then it's going to be really challenging for you to have that stick-to-itiveness that my son got when he got his award today. So because you're not making money. So really what I want to instill in you is that when you start your podcast, freaking think a little bit selfish. A long time ago, I was talking to somebody and they said, Adam, if you don't learn how to be more selfish, you're probably going to end up miserable. You might even commit suicide. You might end up, what did they say? You might end up miserable. You might end up resentful if you don't start thinking about yourself also. Because at the time, and I still am a very loving, caring person that wants to help everybody. I hope you can feel that. At the time, I was a people pleaser. I didn't do anything for me. I would hurt myself just to make sure other people, and somebody noticed this who is wiser than me. And it actually scared me. One of the things they said is you'll end up miserable or you'll end up committing suicide. And I'm like, suicide? Like that really shocked me. And I was like, whoa, okay, I need to be selfish. Well, I don't think that's going to happen to you with your podcast. What I do think that will happen is you'll maybe you'll kill your podcast. Okay, we'll say that. You'll suicide the podcast because it's not pouring into you as much as you're pouring into it. There is a law of freaking reciprocity. Guys, gals, it's a law. It's not the theory of reciprocity. Okay. It's not a theory of reciprocity. It's not an idea of reciprocity. It's not an altruistic reciprocity. This thing is a effing law. It always has to be. You give and you get. Opposites attract. Quid pro quo. Literally, quid pro quo. If you look way back, tit for tat is, I think, the newish. Tit for tat is the new way to say quid pro quo. Quid pro quo, it's Latin, right? Isn't it Latin? Where that's like the oldest language, and it means this for that. I give you something and I get something in return. If you're only taking, you won't last long. If you're only giving, you won't last long. I am sorry to say that it doesn't work that way. It goes back to Latin roots, the law of reciprocity, not the theory. So if you're not making money through your podcast, you'll ultimately quit the podcast. You'll commit you'll kill the podcast. You will upset the people that got hooked into it. Don't do that. Do not do that. So in short, it just means that you ought to find a way to have your podcast make you money, put money into your pocket. So here's a couple of ways, just in brief. I'll throw these off the top of my head. You can have affiliate relationships. I do affiliate stuff with like podcast equipment because I know that my listener, I know you, need a podcast equipment, like absolutely 100%. So I went and vetted some podcast equipment. I got an Amazon affiliate relationship. I put the stuff that my team and I vetted on our website, and you can find it at growyourshow.com/PDF. I allow that to be an affiliate relationship where we make a few bucks a month. It's a little bit, right? It's just a little bit. The next thing, we may or may not advertise. You could advertise to make money. You could have a sponsor, a partner of your show, where you mention them and mention their product and mention what they do. That's a way to make money through your podcast. Another way to do it is to sell your own products or services. And here's the thing that I noticed with this loving, giving, amazing woman. Because as I said before, she's the type of person that I look up to because she has a lot of patience. And I don't have a lot of patience. I snap with my kids sometimes. I snap with my sweetheart every now and again. And I snap with strangers. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't. I snap with strangers. Like when I'm driving, I'm not the person who's going to go and get in a fist fight, but I am probably going to be a little vocal because I don't know why. But I have a short temper. It's easy for me to get passionate about stuff. And that's the type of thing that happens. So the point being that I really see all this in her, but she reminds me of how I was the day that I was told, Adam, if you don't start learning how to be selfish, you're going to be miserable your whole life, or you're going to end up committing suicide. And that has always stuck in my mind, the verbatim. And I think that the same thing with her. And with you, when you're launching your show, when you're launching your podcast, I think for you, you've got to be willing to gain something. I fully understand that a lot of my clients are listening to this podcast. And so if she's listening to this podcast, here's what I want to say to her. And if you are in her situation, please listen up. If you join your podcast completely altruistic, just to give back, just to pour into people, you'll end up finding yourself getting burnt out. If you don't find a way to have that law of reciprocity, the quid pro quo, the tit for tat, if you don't find a way to have money go into your pocket or something else at least, then you're going to crush your podcast and your listener. And that's exactly where she is today. The next one, because she wasn't making money, wanting to change direction. I think this is a totally feasible thing. These two women, one of them has enjoyed the podcast for the last 12 months. They just hit their 12-month mark. And she's just a wonderful lady. These are just great people and so smart. The other has another idea for a podcast. And so I'm really excited for her. She just wants to change direction. But one thing that she doesn't want to do is squash the first podcast. it was her baby. It was her figurative baby. She made it. She created it. The love in her heart, just like the love of two individuals, come together and they create a miracle baby. And all of a sudden, one of them might be pregnant. That type of love creates a baby. And it's the same thing when you start a podcast. In many cases, you frickin' love your podcast. You like are attached to it. You want to nurture it. You want to mother it. You want to care for it. You want to make sure that if and when it's not in your house anymore, they're at least going to a good home. So if you've got a daughter, you want them to have a great partner. If you got a son, you want them to have a great partner, a great life. You want them to be doing good. Well, that's the same thing. One of the two partners who are therapists, psychologists, have their doctorate degrees and work at colleges, college campuses. One of the two is like, not going to crush that, want to keep it, but I'm personally going to put my focus somewhere else. And so I don't fault that at all. I think that it's okay for us to understand that, hey, I want to start putting my attention somewhere else. Well, that's exactly what she's going to do. And then we're going to go ahead and serve her. These are some of the reasons people that I personally know have wanted to quit or are quitting or are changing direction with their podcast. A lot of ideas there. And I want to leave you with this. If you don't yet have a podcast, or even if you do, commit to this for me. If I have a podcast, say that out loud right now with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. If I have a podcast, I need to have it for at least 3 years. Say that part. If I have a podcast, and then the other part is, I need to have it for at least 3 years. My goal for you is that you listen to this, you'll see some ways that you can fail, see some ways that you can succeed, see some ways that other people have failed, and you can kind of get that out of your blind spot and be able to pay attention to it. But I really want you to leave this episode being like, hey, if I have a podcast now, or if I'm about to launch a podcast, I've got to be committed to do this for at least 3 years. That's the minimum. And if you do that, you absolutely will, A, go a little bit further than maybe these 3 clients of mine have so far. And B, you'll be able to serve some people. You'll be able to make some money. You'll be able to really just leave a legacy and an impact on the world. There is a bell curve. If you work with us, the bell curve's faster. Seems like most of our clients within a couple of months, if they're launching with us, because we do a really strong launch, they generally get really good traction. There's a lot of people that don't work with us and they don't get quite that amount of traction. And if that's you and if you're going to do it on your own, I support you. I want you to do what you think is right, but I want you to be prepared. I want you to be prepared with what could happen. And just think about this. If I launch a podcast, I want to do it for at least 3 years. Let me leave you with that and I'll see you on the next episode. Oh, hey, because 3 of my clients came to me recently looking to find a way to have their podcast make them money instead of cost them money. We put together a resource for some of our clients, and I want to give it to you as well. It's something that did actually seem to help because one of them is now making $2,600 a month, another one's $4,500 a month, and the third is making between $5,000 and $10,000 each month. And so it's been a resource that's been incredibly valuable to them. It's our sponsor sheet template. It's a template of a sponsor sheet, and it gives you something that you can hand to potential sponsors and hopefully also be making $2,600, $4,500, or between $5,000 and $10,000 regularly each month with your podcast. So this has been a contributing factor to helping all 3 of those clients turn their podcast into an additional income stream for them. And the way that you can find it is just going to our website, growyourshow.com, but put in /templates, growyourshow.com/templates. And then you can actually download that template and others that could be valuable to your podcasting experience. I'll see you on the next episode.